look that just listen to Shannon and Stephen A. Smith all day. Like we've actually lived it. So it's different. You know what I mean? So we really understand lines. That's the whole thing. That's all I'm saying. So SEC game of the week. This is a good game, Jeff. You got number 20 Kentucky 5-0. You got Georgia 5-0. Georgia's starting to become a little. The cracks are starting to kind of show a little bit with this team. They don't excite me. It seems like they're bored, Jeff. Like literally, they're getting bored. You know, you played against Auburn last week in Alabama, and you're supposed to smash Auburn. You're a 14.5-point favorite. Auburn led most of the game, and they wound up winning the game in fun fashion. But, you know, they did that because they know how good they are now. You know what I mean? But you can't keep doing that week in and week out. It's just, no, you're just not going to keep getting away with it. Georgia's defense is not the same type of defense they were the last two seasons because, let's face it, Georgia had some issues with UAB of all teams. You know what I mean? And it's like they're bored. It's not that they're bad or anything, Jeff, or are struggling. It's that they're bored. And when teams are bored, sometimes they need to get woke up, you know? And I think that when you look at this game with Kentucky just coming off the game that they just played, man, they are uber confident. And then you have to understand they have the best player on the field. They're not going to say that this weekend, Jeff, but they have the best player on the field. And that's going to be Ray Davis. Ray Davis ran for 280 yards, 3 touchdowns last week. And this was on 26 carries. This was his most carries of the year. And literally, they had to do it because he was coming along so nicely throughout the year. Now he's sitting there at 280, had himself a game of games last week, and he absolutely helped Kentucky crush their rival Florida last week. Now, you look at Georgia's stats, you got Beck, who's playing absolutely out of his mind. They haven't even considered him as a Heisman Trophy candidate, but the guy's thrown for 1,500 yards and has thrown for 7 touchdowns this year and only 1 interception. He's had some very exceptional games. He threw for 313 last time out against Auburn last week and was able to get his team home with the great victory in that spot. So I truly do think that this game is a lot better than it looks on paper. But you know that Georgia is going to come in here extra confident, ready to roll. But I still think, though, Kentucky is going to really fight in this one, Jeff. I just got that feeling that they're going to fight in this game. They got a running game. They can control the clock. They can make this a short. They can make this a short game for themselves. I love the plus 14.5. And if you want to be a little cocky and a little cute, go ahead and take the 8-1. You know, the 8-1 is kind of sexy in a sense, in my opinion. I think that I'm getting the vibes of South Carolina, Georgia from a few years ago. I'm sorry, I just am. You know, so what are your thoughts on this one, Jeff? And who do you have winning this game?
I like what you're saying. I said it last week. Georgia, I said there's chinks in the armor of Georgia. And I love how you started it and prefaced it. They look bored. You know who they remind me of? They remind me of the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL. Undefeated, haven't been threatened. And if you look at Jalen Hurts' demeanor, it's like, I don't want to say they're going through the motions, but they haven't caught their stride. Georgia's first game on their schedule that will catch them, and like, you'll see that, Georgia. I think it's the first weekend they're going to go to Knoxville. I think they're at Tennessee there. It's a tough number. Here's what I would suggest in this game. The Georgia defense has been showing up. Brock Bowers, the best tight end in the game, probably the best tight end we have seen in forever. He'll be a top 5 pick when he comes out this year. The offense, Georgia's been stagnant. The defense has been the defense. If I do some basic math here, Pops, 20, 30, 17 is the final here, 31-17. So if I'm looking at this game, I look for the Kentucky team total if it's like around 17.5 to bet under. I think the Georgia D takes control of this game. Maybe the Georgia offense wakes up. Low-scoring game. If anyone wakes up, it might be the Georgia offense. Listen, Georgia's interest is peaked with Kentucky. Why? 5-0 undefeated. So might as well give them a loss and so we can move on to the next game. But again, it's just been a kind of a blue collar every Saturday. We come, we show up, we take care of business, next man up mentality. But they're showing chinks in the armor, pups.
All right. I love it, Jeff. Always good analyst on the SEC games and everything like that. And we know the SEC is the premier conference. But before we go to commercial, I would say that they're having an off year this year. They're not good to me this year. They have Georgia, who's the only top 10 team right now. And then for the first time in like ages, you have Alabama outside the top 10 at 11. Okay. And then it scatters out. They got 5 teams in there, but they're not in the top 15 this year. You got 4 teams sitting in the top in the 21 through 24. So they're doing that because of namesake with the conference, but the teams are this conference this year. I can't say they're going to go into somebody to say the best team in the Pac-12's house and beat them. You can't say that this year. You can't send your worst team out to beat the best team in other conferences like the SEC is always bragged about. You know what I mean? So I feel like this year is a really off year for that conference in a sense. You know what I mean? Even though they still got 6 that are on the board that are in the top 25. Go ahead.
And last week with LSU giving up a 55 burger at Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, they now have 2 losses. They're out. Mm-hmm. Alabama already has 1 loss to Texas. They travel to Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher this week.
Mm-hmm.
The line opened at 3. It's down to 1.5. I guess Alabama might have another injured quarterback. They don't know who's starting, yada, yada, yada. My point very simply, and this will be crushing for the SEC. This will be crushing for the football world and the networks. If Alabama loses at A&M, they get 2 losses. They're out. They're gone. I don't care if they cheat. I don't care if they beat Georgia in the SEC final. They're gone because they're going to be playing LSU in the first weekend of November, and one of those teams is going to have 3 losses after that game. So my point is, I think Georgia's really rooting for Alabama here to beat A&M, at least keep them alive in the talk, because you know what I'd really like to see right now is next week, Georgia play, let's say, a USC, an Oregon, or a Washington, because those teams are so explosive this year. I want to see how many points that they would give up. And just to get a real litmus test, because I think last year Oregon opened up against Georgia and Georgia beat them, 48-7 or something stupid like that. I'd like to get a litmus test just to see how good they are, because they're saying the number 1 team in the country right now, I'm hearing, is Michigan. Well, if Michigan lined up against Georgia, what's the under over there? 34? First one to 17 wins? I mean, the Pac-12 is so exciting this year for the offense. The SEC is the dominant defenses, and then you got the Big Ten, who's got 3 teams this year, Pops. It's got Michigan, it's got Ohio State, and anyone sleeping on Penn State, shame on you. Shame on you. If Penn State cheats, they're in the Final Four. So, and then Texas has already won in Tuscaloosa. So it's wide open this year. It hasn't been like this for a long, long time, Pops.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. College football is in peak performance this year. All right. So with that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we will jump into a whole bunch of baseball. Not too much baseball, because I only got Jeff for so much more time, but we will be talking some baseball. So you guys stay tuned. This is the Premier Sports Betting Show, the Primetime Angles with the